right, why don't I go ahead and call to order the Town of Madison public hearing by the Board of Selectmen. I want to say welcome to everybody this evening. The purpose of this public hearing is we have two items on the agenda. And it's to allow us, the Board of Selectmen, to hear back from the public about what they think about some of the things that the Board of Selectmen is currently doing or implementing possibly in the future. I do want to say that if you sent an email to the board today specifically relating to agenda item number 2, we won't formally read those emails into the record, but they will be attached as part of the meeting minutes. So they will be part of the public record. So anybody can review them online and have an opportunity to look at those comments as part of the minutes of tonight's public hearing. Welcome, Erin. We decided since we got a lot of, we'd kick off real quickly. But so the first item on the agenda is the Madison CDB Small Cities Grant Project at Conker's Meadow. And I just want to briefly say this is a grant the town received to make improvements at Conker's Meadows Apartments. And as part of this process, we need to receive feedback from the public about improvements made as a result of that grant. And so I will welcome Elaine Reitman to make just a quick overview of what's been done to Concord Meadows, please. And then we'll take public comment. You are muted, Elaine.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is Elaine Reitman. I'm president of the board at Madison Interfaith Residential Housing Community. And I have the completion report for the Small Cities Block Grant that was awarded to Madison for the purpose of construction at Concord Meadows. So the grant was applied for. Application year was 2018. We began construction in the spring of 2019. The completion and sign off was on March 31st, 2020. And this was an $800,000 grant that was awarded by the state of Connecticut to Madison for public housing modernization. The project included energy efficiency measures, which were replacement of windows and doors in apartments and the community building, handicap accessibility improvements, bathroom conversions, installation of walk-in showers, improved hands-free entrance access to buildings that required them. All funds benefited residents of Concord Meadows, and Concord Meadows residents are low or moderate income, and they are either over 65 or have disabilities. No residents were displaced during the construction activities, and all 90 households residing at Concord Meadows benefited from the improvements. So if there are any questions about this, just let me know. And I can send you a copy, Lauren, if you would like, in writing, if you need it.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything?
I know it's been well received, certainly for the residents, a lot of the improvements that have been made. So
yes, and we're waiting to embark on a new set of improvements.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess with that, should we just open it up to see if any members of the public, Lauren, want to ask questions or make comment?
Yes, anyone who would like to make comments on the first item of the public hearing can raise their hand and I will allow you to speak. I don't see anyone raising their hand.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for all the hard work you guys are doing. We're excited to see the improvements and to see this continue further to that project. So thank you very much. All right. So next item on the agenda is to listen to public comment regarding the proposed modifications by the Coastal Resiliency Committee to the town's floodplain ordinance. And I think we wanted to start off with the Resiliency Committee making a presentation to the public, just outlining what their proposed changes are going to be. And I also, just before we start discussion on item 2, I just wanted to come forward and disclose that to the board and to the public that my husband and I do own a property in the AE flood zone area. And so out of an abundance of caution, and I did consult with town council earlier this evening, that we thought it made sense that I would recuse myself from this part of the hearing and not participate in the discussion. And so with that, I will just move over the virtual gavel to acting for Selectman Scott Murphy for this part of the discussion tonight. So with that, I will pass it over to Scott.
Thank you, Peggy. And I guess we will now hold a public hearing on item number 2, and I will pass it over to our esteemed colleagues. Graham, am I going to hand it to you first as the chair of the coastal?
I'm
member
Hank's
of?
actually the chair.
Hank's actually the chair. Sorry,
Yes.
Hank. So
No,
Hank,
No, that's okay. I was happy to have
to
Graham.
punt it to Graham.
He was getting a battlefield promotion.
See what he says.
That's
Hank,
great.
I'll give it over to you. Thank you.
Hank,
Yeah, thanks very
Before
much.
you get started, I think we have one
Sure.
more member, Walter Welsh, that needs to get moved over. If
To
he's
bring
not
over.
on.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yep. Thank you.
He wasn't on the meeting, Dave.
Okay, well, then I think I'll contact him separately and Hank can get started.
Okay, we'll start, and then Walter will be here soon. Well, thank you very much, board, and for everybody that's online. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you the Coastal Resiliency Commission's presentation on the changes to the floodplain ordinance. We had reviewed this earlier, previously, not today, but previously with the Board of Selectmen. And as a result of the first meeting with them, they warranted that we were in good enough place and had a good enough story, and it was interesting enough obviously interesting for the town, that we would move forward and invite the public to see the presentation and to also comment on it. So we appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to make sure I see the Dave. Do I see the? Are you sharing your screen or
I'll
something?
pull it up right now.
Yeah, thanks.
We can see it now, Hank.
Okay, great. Yeah, that was just the opening. Thank you very much for being here. And so the second slide is just a basic background of the Coastal Resiliency Commission. We were established by the Board of Selectmen in response to what has become pretty apparent, the sea level rise and some of the flood risks and other risks that are associated with that. Sea level, obviously, along the shore, but not just for the shore. We're also interested in reviewing, and our purview covers lakes and rivers and other places within Madison that are water related that may be at risk due to inundation of storms and the such. So that's what our charge is, and we've been at it for probably 18 months, something like that. And it's gone well. We had a lot of, when we first were established, we made the call out for people to come and join the commission. And we ended up with, to start, 18 citizens came forward to join the Coastal Resiliency Commission. And we invited them all to join. And so we've had some turnover, but it's a big commission, but we're seem to make it manage as best we can. The next slide is, let's see here. The next slide is just a depiction of where we are relative to adaptation to sea level rise. You know, we can protect ourselves with a wall or jetty constructions and whatever sort of man-made objects we can put between ourselves and the water. We can make accommodations, which you primarily see in houses and buildings and places being raised. And then the last step is where you retreat. The water has gotten so far up that you can't protect yourself, you can't accommodate it, and so that you have to pull back. When we're talking about the floodplain ordinance, which is on the next page, Dave, we're talking about accommodating. So we're at the place where we have a floodplain ordinance and have in Madison for a number of years. Just like a lot of other towns, Madison's most recent ordinance, as it says on the chart, was adopted in 2010, updated in 2013, It's now 2021, and so it's been a while before since it's been updated, particularly in light of the increase in sea level that we're noticing. So it's time that we moved on. Next slide, please, Dave. So I just I'm sorry, I was looking at this screen previously. So anyway, here are the key recommended changes to the Madison Floodplain Ordinance that we reviewed and submitted. First of all, there are three key ones that we want to review tonight. The first one is an update to the look back period. Madison is currently at 1 year. We're recommending 5 years, which is consistent with other towns that's surrounding towns. We want to suggest that and have recommended that we amend the base flood elevation, the BFE parameters, BFE plus 2 feet for the VE and coastal area zones only. Those are the zones along the water. And BFE plus 1 for all other zones. That's already part of the floodplain ordinance, but it's the noted exception. The notice change that we're recommending is BFE plus 2 for BE and coastal AE zones. And then along with that, make sure we establish recommending to make sure we establish an oversight body for variance that may be warranted for properties that are struggling with the floodplain ordinance changes, or not only these changes for that we're recommending now, but this would be established as a group that would be looking at changes related to the floodplain ordinance well beyond 2 or 3 years from now. Even it would stay as a permanent oversight of the floodplain and the effects it might have on individual properties. So the next slide is just some background. Effective October 1st, 2018, state building. This is a lot of what we're talking about here is based off of this chart where it says Connecticut Office of State Building Inspectors. They amended the state building code. And that's what's driving a lot of these changes in elevation and construction requirements for new construction and substantially improved constructions, both in the coastal areas and inland floodplains. And that's really the driver behind these. Next slide, please. As you're seeing here, all the municipalities are required to utilize these new regulations. As I referenced, I'm not going to read this to you, but many municipalities, including close by neighbors, Brantford, Clinton, Guilford, Westbrook, they all have floodplains, but they've all acted recently to update with new regulations. And the following slide, we're going to go through some brief descriptions significant of the differences between the DEEC model and the proposals for the new Madison. And our current floodplain specifies, so let me just make sure. I want to see something here quickly. If you go to the next slide real quick, Dave, I just want to, okay, go back, please. Okay, I'm going to introduce, there are 3 people that are going to talk tonight besides myself. There's going to be Woody Weiss, who's going to talk about the look back. I think Graham Curtis may be talking about BFE, where there was some question about who was going to talk about that. So we'll find out when we get to the BFE. And then Walter Welsh is going to cover the topic of the variances that I mentioned earlier. So right now, Woody would be talking about the look back period for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Hank, and thank you all for attending this public hearing. As Hank said, our current floodplain ordinance has a 1-year look back, which is actually much shorter than DEEP recommends or FEMA recommends. And we're recommending the 5 years, which is important to note that Brantford, Guilford, Clinton, and Westbrook, along with a slight majority of all towns in the floodplain, which is I think 26 of them have. There are some that have less, than 5 years. There are some that have considerably more. There is one that has an infinite look back, which is Greenwich. So it goes the whole gamut. 5 really is on the lower end of what FEMA recommends, and we are comfortable with that. We spoke to town staff, and we also spoke to engineers, civil engineers that work in the field, and we feel comfortable with the 5-year look back, but we're also sensitive to imposing it immediately. So we're suggesting that we actually start with a July 1st, 2018 date and ignore any improvements that were made previous to that. So in essence, it's a 3-year look back starting on July 1st, 2021. And it will go forward until July 1st, 2023 and become 5 years at that point. Why did we suggest this? Well, first and foremost, Madison is a forward-looking community. And not only do we want to respond to sea level rise and increased frequency of coastal storms and the damage they bring, and frankly, the damage we visibly saw during Irene and Sandy, but our charge as a commission was to make Madison more resilient along the coast. And I think that this is a very modest way to do that. And we were comfortable with it. We, as I said before, we're conforming with all our surrounding towns. Many of you are aware of the National Flood Insurance Program. Moving to 5 years protects that program, which as a result of some of the previous storms is in financial difficulty, and Congress would love nothing better than to trim that or even eliminate it if the claims for future storms are as severe as Sandy and in particular and Irene were. We think it will lower the number of claims and amount of claims, and it'll also lower the potential rate increases that we all see. It protects our tax base. There's a tremendous amount of valuable property down on the shore, and having that become more resilient will protect that tax base for the town. Obviously, less damage means more public safety to neighbors. And it also protects the homeowners from a catastrophic loss due to a storm because the home isn't as resilient as it could be made by having it flood-proofed. Next slide. Thank you, Dave. We put this together, and I hope it's as clear as we meant it to be. But this kind of shows how the look back works. 7/1/21, it's 3 years. So starting in 21, going down to 18, the bar is 3 years long. And then 7/1/22, it's 4. But if you go to January 1st, 2022, how long is it? It's 3.5 years. The date stays fixed until it hits 7/1/2023, and then it's 5 years thereafter. So you can see the bottom line is incrementing up just the same way the top line is, so that from 7/1/2023 on, we have a 5-year look back. But we felt phasing into it would be easier than just going into it immediately. And that was the decision, and that's our recommendation. Graham, I think you'll take over with BFE.
Yes, correct. Thanks, Woody. Thanks for the very clear explanation. Next, I'd like to discuss the second significant thing we're proposing to change from the current building code. But first, a definition: base flood elevation. Base flood elevation is the anticipated flood determined by FEMA through detailed analysis of the 1% annual chance of flooding, also known as the 100-year flood. This is made based on the historical data and extensive computer modeling by FEMA. The state building code requires a minimum base flood elevation plus 1 foot. That's current. They publish maps, which I'm sure most people are familiar with, that shows the 100-year flood elevation along the coast ranging between, say, 12 and 14 feet above sea level. For comparison, the roads in the area are generally between 7 and 10 feet. So it's between 3 and 5 feet above the elevation of most of the roads in the area is the 100-year flood elevation. By way of comparison, Sandy reached approximately elevation 7 back then. So Sandy was not a hurricane, it was a tropical storm when it hit New Jersey 100 and 200 miles away. So just by comparison, Sandy was only a tropical storm. So again, and FEMA publishes that data based on historical information. So what's changed? So in December 2018, the State Department of Environmental and Energy Protection responded with Public Act mandating that states and towns evaluate for planning purposes a 20-inch sea level rise by 2050. That's 20 inches by 2050. Now I know there's some discussion about how real that is, but that was a fairly conservative estimate, and clearly we're seeing it over the last 50 years. As I said, this FEMA is backward looking and is based strictly on historical data. The state of Connecticut, this model was forward looking, projecting for the future sea level rise by 2050. So how does that affect us? Next slide.
Hey guys, maybe just before we go too far, can one of you just explain what the look back actually means for the public here? I just think that's an important sort of point. We're getting some questions in the chat, so before we get too far down the path,
should I take that, Hank?
put a pin in it.
Yeah, Woody, please. Thank you.
Sure. So the look back period is directly related to something called substantial improvement or substantial damage. So FEMA looks at the value, the appraised value of a home, and say it's, just for the sake of conversation, 200,000. Then you are allowed to spend up to 50% of that appraised value, the market value, which would be 100,000. The look back period determines the length of time that you look back to other improvements that you may have made within that period. So let's say we have a 1-year look back period at the moment. So let's say in January you spend 50,000. That means for the rest of the year, you can spend another 50, which would make the 100. And then you cannot do anything to the home for 12 months. So you have a 12-month look back. After that, you can. So with a 5-year, the same thing would be true. So over 5 years, you can spend 50% of the market value of the dwelling on improvements. If you go beyond that threshold, that substantial improvement threshold, or in the case of damage, the substantial damage threshold, which is the same percentage, then you have to bring the dwelling up to current FEMA standards. So that means if you're sitting at AE 12 and you're in a coastal AE zone and it's an AE 14, you have to raise the first floor to be that height. So you have to then storm-proof certain things. There are certain window changes that have to be made, all to make the home less likely to be flooded and less likely to be damaged by high winds. That's the purpose of the look back, and hopefully that was clear.
That's helpful, Woody. And maybe just, I don't know if it's you or one other of the team here, but just define for us what an improvement actually means in this case. I know you used the word substantial improvement, but what does an improvement mean?
An improvement is basically anything done to the home other than routine maintenance. So painting the house doesn't count, but re-roofing may count depending on how extensive it is, or replacing the siding on the house, that would be a substantial improvement. Putting in a new kitchen would be a substantial improvement, but it doesn't really count as a substantial improvement until you hit the threshold. And that's the sum total of improvements made on a dwelling within the look back period. Is that clear, Scott? Or Scott?
I think he's frozen.
Okay.
So I think that was probably helpful to answer some of the questions. So I think you can continue on, Graham.
Right. So just to clarify, so this base flood elevation only comes into play when you make a substantial improvement to your home. So as I was saying, so the current law, if you exceed the threshold, you're required to go base flood elevation +1. So say your house it's 12, you'd have to raise it to 13 under the current requirements if you hit the threshold. So in light of the ongoing concern over sea level rise, we discussed what's the best way to approach, and people at the state have also looked into this. So they're recommending in their model guidance a 2-foot elevation, and I would say the state of Connecticut and all their public buildings also requires 2 feet above that elevation to factor in the future. As I said, FEMA is strictly backward-looking historical data. They're not taking into any account what's changing and what's going to happen over the next 50 years. So that's why the state is recommending 2 feet. They've implemented 2 feet, and we're recommending 2 feet in the V. We looked at all the zones. We're only recommending 2 feet in the VE and the coastal AE zone, which are immediately adjacent to Long Island Sound. So our current floodplain ordinance specifies base flood currently is 0 increase, which is not allowed by building code, which is +1. So in the conclusion, we're recommending base flood elevation +2 feet. So who does that affect? Next slide. So the next slide, this is a map. This is the area. There's approximately 150 structures in the VE zone and the coastal AE zone, which are immediately adjacent to the coast that would be affected by this ordinance. Now, recognizing there are some potential hardships for people who may have just recently raised their house or have spent money on their house recently and didn't bring it up. So we envision a variance program. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Walter to discuss the variance procedure that we're also thinking of implementing.
Yeah, thank you, Graham. And I won't be long on this one. I'm sure there are lots of questions we want to get to. And I know I was just looking at the nice bar chart we arranged. It seemed like it was sort of an optical illusion. I could look at it twice and look at it again and see something different, but we'll answer, I'm sure we'll answer any questions on that. The variance procedure is in the current floodplain ordinance. There haven't been many need for variance in recent years, but it's a typical procedure for any type of land use regulation, that if there's a form of hardship affecting your particular property or an abutting property, there are bases for obtaining some relief, from the requirements, some variance from the requirements due to some form of hardship or difficulty. So that's part of the process. And when you adopt a new regulation, new form of a regulation, the process may become more important than in the past. So we have that there, and I don't think I have to say much more on that, Hank, and you could probably take the next step.
Yeah, thanks, Walter, and Graham and Woody. Peggy, that ends our presentation part. No more slides. So if there are any questions, I don't know how you want to do that. But we're all here, so we're happy to answer.
Hank, I'm going to take over because Selectman Murphy's Wi-Fi has somehow conked out on him. So
okay.
Since Peggy has recused herself,
sure.
I think we are now ready for the public hearing and commentary from the public. I'd like to remind everybody that this is not a debate tonight. This is not a question and answer session, as much as it is an opportunity for the public to express their views about what is being proposed. The committee, we may allow, if time permits, a little bit of questioning of the committee regarding specifics, but if there are a lot of people who wish to present their testimony and their opinions tonight, we have an obligation to make sure everybody gets heard. So at this point, we are going to open up the floor. Lauren, do I have this correct? If somebody would like to speak, they should indicate by pressing the little icon that says raise their hand.
Correct. And then I will allow them to speak. When they are on camera, they need to state their first and last name and their address for the record.
All righty. So those who would like to speak should indicate by pressing the icon, raise your hand. And then Lauren will allow you to enter the meeting so we can see you and hear you. And we ask that you identify yourself. So Lauren, could you bring our first member of the public on?
You will have to unmute yourself. I've moved over Emil Geisenheimer.
Good afternoon. Emil Geisenheimer, 14 Middle Beach Road. I sent a letter to the first Selectwoman, Selectmen, full members of the board. We raised our house in 1995 before there was any regulation in the state or the town requiring it to be elevated. However, today it probably does not, may or may not meet the minimum required, let alone a new minimum. I strongly object to the look back because, first of all, looking back to 2018 does not permit someone to take action. Their past actions could be used to force them to spend a fortune to elevate a house. Elevating these homes is extremely expensive. So we're going to use the town appraiser's estimate of the value of the structure. I really urge you not to do that because the town appraiser is public. Allocation of the market value to the structures is not emphasized, but is disproportionately allocated to the land. So many of the structures, while they are very build or rebuild, are not reflected in the appraised value according to the town appraisal. My next point is that this 3-year look back, which may not withstand legal scrutiny because I don't think you can hold someone accountable for ex post facto application of a rule. But the look back at in general is just onerous because you're talking about 50% over 5 years, that's 10% a year. Maintenance on these buildings, some of which, according to what the testimony I just heard, which I consider to be routine, would be considered a substantial. Every year, waterfront homes have to repair their roofs. I do it every year. I've repaired and replaced shingles every year. If you're on the water, winter winds will cause damage to those things. I paint the house every year. It would be very easy to accumulate over 5 years, 50% of the value. Now, the notion that adding a kitchen or replacing a kitchen or repairing a kitchen, or bringing it up to date is somehow going to trigger elevating a house seems absurd to me. It should be in the interest of the town that these homes be maintained to pristine condition inside and out without having to elevate them. I told you I elevated mine. Water in my house through Sandy, Irene, and all these nor'easters, but I might be compelled to raise it yet again under the regulations as proposed, which is an absurd outcome. I'd also add to that protecting the tax base, it'll destroy the tax base. These homes will not be desirable by new buyers if they come with the burdens that are outlined in this new regulation. So I think it'll lead to postponed maintenance because people will attempt to not trigger the 50%. I think it will have immediate effect, adverse effect on the value of these homes. It will cause the tax to go down on waterfront property, and that burden be shifted to homes away from the water. So I think that the Board of Selectmen should be very, very cautious and careful about uh, uh, regulation on the people of Madison. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Geisenheimer. Lauren, how many do we have? I'm seeing 2 with hand raised at this point. Is that true? Oh, now we're up to 4, 5.
You're on mute, Lauren.
All right. They're going up. So we'll move over to the next person then, Lauren. Here's Janet.
Hi,
Hi, Janet. Go ahead.
can you hear me? Great.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. I totally agree with Emil, with what Emil just said. As a realtor in town, I think that this changing the look back from 1 year to 5 years will lower the values of property in Madison. I think right now we shouldn't worry about what surrounding towns are doing, because we are at an advantage by just having the 1 year look back. And I think it's good for us to have that advantage. I feel like the 1 year look back is enough so that if somebody is doing a substantial renovation on their home, then of course they should lift their home to the current standards. The 1 year look back allows that to happen. A 5 year look back, when you look at these properties, I'm in a modest house in an AE zone. So I was redrawn into the flood map in 2011. So when I bought my house, I was not in the flood zone. So here I am now sitting in a house where the value of the structure is much less than the value of the land because of where the house sits. So if we're looking at the appraised value of the structure, it's an extreme hardship for you to tell me that I cannot spend $100,000 or half the appraised value of my structure over the course of 5 years. It's a hardship that you're placing on us. And I don't really see the upside in the bullet points that you laid out. I don't believe that this will lower anybody's flood insurance rates. I don't believe that that this is going to substantially increase, in fact, it will decrease the value of properties near the water. So my question is, why are you doing this? I really think that it's a hardship for people in the AE flood zones in modest homes. And there's the bad outweighs the good by far here. Thanks for your time.
Janet, just for the record, can you provide your name and address, please?
Sure. Janet Nicolini, 8 Madison Avenue.
Thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off either if you want to finish.
No, that's fine.
Good. All right, thank
Kim
you. Looks
Brunstad
like we
is
have.
next.
Yep, very good. Hi,
Hi.
Kim, can you hear us?
Yes, thank you for the time to speak, and thank you all
So
for
you're-
your, yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
And just
Yes.
state your name and your address, please.
Sorry, Kim
we can
Brunstad,
hear you.
15 Texas Road. Thank you to the committee for your hard work, and thank you to the Board of Selectmen for your hard work. I do want to say that as I read this, I am in the AE flood zone, and I just got a copy of this today. So if my remarks don't seem as prepared as I'd like them to be, I apologize. But I would like to say I happen to be a lawyer, and as I'm reading this, there are so many things that jump out at me that are of grave concern. Starting with cost, how you define cost. You talk about the cost of any reconstruction, rehabilitation, addition, alteration, repair, or other improvement of a structure is included in determining that cost basis. So as I interpret insurance law, or the body of principles behind insurance, the way that you're reading that, or it's attempting to be read, it seems, is that if $200,000 is reimbursed to me by my insurance company for damage from a hurricane, the committee's proposal would assess that at $200,000, when in fact, the whole point of insurance is to bring the property back to what it was. So I would say if I got reimbursed $200,000 after a hurricane, the value added is zero. You're literally bringing me back to the value of what I had. So there's a fundamental miscalculation, first of all, here. Then I'd like to look at that July 1st, 2021 date. It's very draconian if you look at that date. Someone who may have bought the house, let's say in May of 2021, is buying a house. All of a sudden, people before them have complied with all laws known in Madison up until that time. They've made improvements that were allowed under the building codes. They've gotten proper permits. So if all of a sudden on July 1st, someone who may have made those improvements themselves that are over 50%, or maybe someone else even did them before they even bought the house, all of a sudden has to raise that house, and it might cost $100,000. So for me, I think of this as a very draconian way of accomplishing this. I suggest it's way too accelerated. And if you were, for example, to try to enforce something like this, at the bare minimum, at the very bare minimum, you should look at going forward 2 years, 2 years from now, looking back 2 years, sorry. So if you go forward from now, 2 years forward, at that moment in time, you could possibly say we could do a 2-year look back. And the reason for that is you just can't retroactively put something on people that they had no idea that they would have to deal with that kind of expense or burden. I also would like to look at the variance section of this proposed regulation. It specifically does not allow for economic or financial hardship. I'm thinking about the little old lady who's in her wheelchair in a house and gets hit by a hurricane. All of a sudden, she maybe becomes disabled. And in this variance law, it doesn't allow for any physical impediments or any physical handicaps. So now you've got this little old lady, her house got hit by a hurricane. It's worth, let's say, $300,000. And that's a whole nother issue. Which market value, who's going to access it? It's flexible. So she's got now, let's say, $150,000 in repairs. And now she can't afford her little ramp for her wheelchair. So now she's got this situation. She wants to repair her house. She wants to put in a ramp. And lo and behold, she can't afford to do it. So you turn to the penalty section. What are we going to do to this little old lady? We're going to fine her $200 a day and possibly imprison her for 10 days of each violation. Like, it's just way too draconian how this could play out. There's some other points I want to make too. I think that anyone who has an existing permit in
Maybe
town.
just one more minute, Kim, because we've got a lot of folks that want to speak too. So I think we're going to try to limit folks to 3 minutes at this point, if you don't mind.
That's fine. I totally understand, Scott. My apologies for being too verbose. Very quickly, I just think there are a lot of other things, and I think that the town could find itself subject to lawsuits, particularly with some of the provisions in here and the undue draconian nature of this, and the fact that people would be blindsided by this. Thank you. Sorry about going over.
No worries, Kim. Thank you. Who do we have next? Lauren? We have about 8 hands raised at this point.
Yep. I'm moving over Alexis Offland, and I'm sorry if I just butchered your last name.
Okay, don't worry. You won't be the first person. Hi, I'm Alexis Offland. I'm from 30.
Hi, Alexis.
How are you? I'm from 30 Linden Lane. I did try to go through the process of tearing down the house and building a new one. And the cost of what I had actually purchased the property and the land for and the house outweighed the actual market value once I built it. And so no bank was going to give me a loan for something like that. So it put me sort of in a position where I had to just fix the place. I think the rules the rules I understand, but I think it's not taking into account the sort of smaller homes. My house is 900 square feet. I'm not a mega mansion on the water, and I'm so restricted. I have a roof that's falling apart. I worked with the town to break up my construction into 2 parts to comply. I'm halfway through, and now the rule's changing, and I'm literally stuck in the middle right now. And I don't think I'm the only one out there if I knew going in that this was going to be a look back and half of my project would not get completed, I just would never have started the project. I'm in deep now, and I don't know how to get out if this happens. A look back in general is just, I wouldn't have made the decisions that I made prior if I knew this was coming down the road. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thanks, Alexis. Who's next?
Up next is Marie Mazzi.
Maybe just lower your hand when you're done speaking
Okay.
for us. Thanks.
Anyway, I couldn't change the name on it. I'm Chuck Peugeot at 61 Bishop Lane in Madison. I'm a contractor on the shoreline. I've been working here for 35 years and raised a lot of houses along the shoreline, did phase construction. And, I'm in the middle one now where we broke it into 3 phases and I'm on the 2nd phase. And like the woman prior to me, it puts somebody in a awkward position because now they would never be able to get another permit to finish the construction. I like what Emil said. I actually raised Emil's house in '95, and there's a difference between the assessment of the houses. It's very low when you're using the town assessments, and I think that that's something you need to look at and use an appraised value of what the structures were. It would up some of the construction so people could actually get something done for what the value of 50% is. And I agree with Emil about the tax base. You're going to have people that have homes that have had some work done like 4 or 3 years ago, and they're going to try to sell them and they're not going to be able to sell them. So your appraised value of that house is not going to be worth the value of that house, because the only way people could buy that house is to tear it down. And some of them are not in tear down condition. Some are, but some aren't. So I think you need to look at that. And maybe the look back period, I think, is 3 years is excessive. I could see it if it was phased in, or you had special requirements for someone who's in the middle of the construction, that they wouldn't have to get a variance to finish it, but maybe you have a special exception because they were in the middle of the construction process. And if someone just started, okay, fine. But I think that, just starting out and saying it's 3-year look back is kind of harsh, and it puts people in a bad position. But I understand what you're trying to do, and it just, I think you just need to think it through a little bit, because it's gonna hurt a lot of people that are in the middle of construction and looking back 3 years, and it does cost a lot of money to maintain these houses on the shoreline. I build a lot of them, and they take a ton of maintenance, and the shoreline is harsh on them. Anyway, I'm glad I just glad for letting me share, and hope I didn't overrun my 3 minutes. Thank you.
You're good, Chuck. Thanks. Appreciate it. Who do we have next?
Dana Weinstein is next. Go ahead and unmute.
For those that didn't see the chat, we are encouraging people to send emails to the Board of Selectmen, the full Board of Selectmen, via our email address, and Lauren popped that into the chat. Go ahead.
Hi,
Dana.
this is Dana Weinstein. I live at 10 Prospect Street. I lived here for almost 20 years. I grew up in this town. I just want to reiterate everything that Emil said, everything that Kim said, everything that Chuck said, and just give you some specifics about some of these houses, and reiterate, appraised value versus appraised value of the house. So my appraised value of my structure is, the appraised value is 200,000. The assessed value is 150. I know there's been a discrepancy of whether you're using the appraised value of the structure, the assessed value of the structure. If it's the appraised value of the structure, I can spend 100,000 over 5 years. A couple years ago, I replaced 6 windows and 2 doors in my house, and it cost me $30,000. They had to be hurricane windows. That was a small fraction of the windows. So if I were to ever want to replace all the windows in my house, now I have to lift my house to do that. How can that be? How can it be that I would have to lift my house to replace my windows? I think there's a lot of things like roof work that cannot be considered an improvement to a house. That is maintenance. Whether I put, a new asphalt roof on, a new cedar roof on, that is something I need to maintain my house's integrity. I mean, that's ridiculous. Construction costs are going up incredibly. So I replaced a few windows recently. I've done my roof. Now I can't do any more work to my house for 5 years. I mean, I think it's going to create a lot of demolition by neglect around here. People just won't be able to do the work. I can't do any more work to my house because I'm restricted by this. I didn't have anything prepared eloquently like some of the other people, but I think this is going to be a major hardship for people, especially people who've owned houses down here for a long time. It just seems unfair to change the rules, and raising a house is super expensive. I wish Chuck could tell us how much it is. I've heard as much as $80,000. If anybody knows specifically, please educate the people on the panel. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dana. Alex, you're up. Alex, can you hear us? Alex Province. You may need to unmute yourself.
He is unmuted, but we still can't hear him. I'm going to move him back over. We'll let the next person talk. We'll try Alex again next.
Thanks.
Bruce Katz will be coming on next.
Hi, Bruce Katz here, 11 Middle Beach Road. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. I listened very carefully to the introduction, and I really don't understand how, I know you made points about how this is important for the benefit of FEMA, lowering costs of flood insurance. I don't get that. I don't see anything in this proposal that has anything to do with reducing the cost of flood insurance or helping FEMA out in any way. And I think it's really important to stress that we're talking here about assessed value, which is often less than the market value. And people should understand that. People are going to stop maintaining their houses. The entire area is going to look more and more shabby. And in cases of even mild storms, if you don't maintain your roof, you don't maintain your siding, damage to your neighbors when big winds come up, you're going to end up causing major issues for neighbors around the entire shoreline because people are not going to maintain their homes, and their parts of their house can blow off in a wind and damage other people's houses. This is going to reduce the property values of the houses on the shoreline. And let me stress, I think it's really important. Emil made this point as well. It's going to increase taxes for the rest of the town. There's no redeeming value in this proposal that I can see. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bruce.
We'll try Alex again.
Give Alex another shot. All right. Alex, you there?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, we can now. Yep.
Okay, geez. All right. I'm calling by phone now. Sorry about that. So I'm at
no problem.
I'm at 917 Boston Post Road, and I bought the house several decades ago before FEMA drew me into the map. And we've spent years now fighting FEMA to try to get drawn out of the map. We're north of Route 1, so we're the brick historic house that was built as early as 1820, downtown Madison. We're on Fence Creek. The idea that if our house were to flood, we would be in so much trouble as a town. My house has survived, the hurricane of 1938, the hurricane of 1955. We've never even had water in our lawn, but FEMA has drawn us into the map, so there's not much we can do. Since 2013, we're spending about $3,000 a year on flood insurance, and just about to undergo a massive restoration. And now having this put upon us, I don't even think we could restore, a kitchen for what the appraised value of our house would be. Never mind, the $100,000 to repoint the bricks, the $50,000 roof, all the costs that are associated with restoring an antique house. So my fear is you're going to end up, a beautiful house like this that needs massive restoration might not be able to financially be restored. Banks might not want to be helpful, and we simply might just be limited at that 50%. So it's a massive, it would be a massive hardship for us, but also for all the Madison people that drive by our house that value these antique houses. The one across the street is no longer there. I mean, it will be rebuilt, and I can't wait. But this is how houses like mine get lost. I mean, 50% of the appraised value of the house might be as low as, it could be as low as $100,000. So anyway, I hope this is an actual point that you guys can use in making an informed decision whether or not to move forward, and hopefully enough people convince you to change your minds. Anyway, hope this was helpful. And it's Alex Province, 917 Boston Post Road.
Thanks. And folks, just a quick process check here. We have a Board of Selectmen meeting that begins at the top of the hour here at 7 o'clock. We're going to push this conversation for another 15 minutes, at least, given the number of hands that are currently raised, and see if we can accommodate everybody. And we'll start the Board of Selectmen meeting promptly at 7:15. So let's see if that gets us there. It looks like we have Robert Patricelli queued up here. So go ahead, Robert.
Correct. We are at 25 Parker Lane, right on the water. It's a house that was built in the 1890s, and we've made repairs and small improvements ever since. I'm just going to make one point for purposes of emphasis and clarity, which is I don't understand the public purpose that you're trying to serve here. And by the way, thank you all volunteers who are trying to pursue the public purpose. The outcome of this change in regulation would be to punish the owners and the properties of older houses along the shoreline, not new construction, which has to comply, but older houses. Why would you do that? Why wouldn't you, as others have said, want to encourage owners like us to keep improving their homes and keeping them up to date? Why force us to put houses on stilts with the aesthetic impact of that? Let the market work here. If that results in my flood insurance costs going up, then I prefer to do that and not to have my front porch 12 feet off the ground. So if you must go ahead, please, as others have suggested, shorten the look back period and carve out significant repairs that have to be made for these houses because of their location. So ease the burden, but the public purpose to me is simply lacking.
Thanks, Robert. And just a friendly reminder too, we will start our Board of Selectmen meeting at 7:15. This will be a topic on our next agenda, which is April 6th. And there'll be plenty of opportunity for discussion and public comment in other, obviously in that meeting and then other venues. So keep that in mind as you're making your comments. Go ahead, Heather.
Oh, hi, Heather Crawford, 553 Summerhill Road. And as I'm a North Madison resident, but I am a marine ecologist by training and a long-term member of the Conservation Commission. And I have been looking at what's been going on with our shoreline for quite some time and have been very concerned about it. So I'm mostly in favor of what's going on. I think that the Resilience Commission did an awesome job putting this together. And I realize that the people who are very concerned tonight are the ones that are direct waterfront, but this also affects the people on many of our streams, many of our rivers, many of our wetlands that are associated with our near coastal waters. And I think this is important. One gentleman made the comment that this is going to push the taxes up to the rest of the town. And I think that's not necessarily a bad idea, because with the predictions of sea level rise and increase in coastal storms, we are going to see more and more damage downtown. We are going to actually, and we are very dependent as a community on that tax base, and we need to actually start shifting that tax base away from the coastline, because it's going to be very hard to protect it in the long run. So those were just a couple of points that I wanted to make.
Thank you, Heather. I think we still have a few more hands raised.
Couple more. I just moved over someone, Rosemary. Make sure you spell your last name for me.
Yes, it's Rosemary Harry, Harry. I'm at 19 Tuxas. I am also speaking to many of the points that have already been voiced, but I just wanted to go ahead and mention them for the record, as well as another concerned individual. I am one of the smaller modest homes, and I have also been concerned about the retroactive nature of the look back. I can understand as a biologist that we do have concerns. I do feel the look back may be appropriate in some way, shape or form, but to implement it retroactively when those of us who have already made these decisions about what we would do within the 50% 1 year look back and the stage improvements we made on our home, to be penalized for that and being allowed no activity for the next 3 years without having to raise our home doesn't seem appropriate. We plan accordingly under that 1 year look back, which is already restriction, and this will cause us I wouldn't say harm, but it will certainly be confounding for us in maintaining our homes properly. I also feel the definition of substantial improvement is very restrictive and inappropriate. The discussion people have had about roofing and siding and the importance of those and the cost associated with those. We don't want to have to put in low cost roofing and then compromise the character of the homes in this neighborhood. We should be able to put in the aesthetics and the quality we would like. These choices do not impact the objectives. I'm actually a little confused when I look at the ordinance and section 1.4 and the objectives, how this look back period going retroactively and how the inclusion of repairs and recovery from storms meets those objectives. That goes along with what the gentleman was saying about public purpose. I guess I also did not plan for this, but I appreciate all that you're doing. I understand there are challenges ahead, but this does have a significant impact on many of us, and we really shouldn't lose the character of our neighborhoods, the characters of our homes, and the quality to which we can keep them. Thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary. Sally Lawrence looks to be up next.
Can you hear me? I hope.
We can, yep.
Okay, good. So I'm Sally Lawrence. I have had a house, my family has had a house in Middle Beach.
What's your address?
Now I am at
what's your address?
Middle Beach Road, and previously I was at 92. I have grown up on the Connecticut shore between Clinton and Madison. I consider myself so fortunate to be able to have a house in Madison. Might be my favorite place. And so also I only learned about this morning, so I wish I had been more prepared. But I also want to thank you for everything you're doing to take care of our beautiful town. And I know you spend a tremendous amount of time doing this for us. So thank you. We have a large project at 110 Middle Beach. We've abided by all the regulations. And I will say, so we had our 1 year look back, and maybe my language is a little confused, or I don't understand everything 100%, but we have taken the break in the middle, and it's been very difficult to do that. And I have to say, I'm not sure that we would undertake a project like that again with these regulations. I think it'd be very, very too difficult. So that beautiful house at 110 probably would have been taken down. If we had to adhere to all of these regulations. There are a couple, I support pretty much everything everyone else has said, in particular, Mr. Geisenhammer. I know you have a letter from John Kislak, and I think you have an email from Dee Dee Stone. Those are the things I've noticed. Bob Petroselli, I think you're punishing the public, or the owners, and the things we're trying to do to keep this town a beautiful place. Agree with him. And going back to Mr. Geisenhammer, there has to be a better way of how you assign value to the house, so that you can make you can make these improvements without doing things inexpensively or cutting corners, or there's just got to be a better way of trying to protect the shoreline and helping us take care of our houses and maintain the charm of this really gorgeous town. Thank you.
Thanks, Sally. How many more do we have, Lauren?
5 more with their hands raised.
Okay. Hi, Ann. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you? This is Ann Heron. I'm at 11 Texas Road, and I agree with every point made so far, including the lady who's the marine biologist. I understand that there's a need for, changes to prevent damage from sea level rising. I think the way that you guys are attempting to do it, which is a great first attempt, is not very feasible, honestly. For the reasons of the look back, going back for current people who are in the middle of projects. Number one, as those people have pointed out, but also from the perspective of people like myself who bought our house in '94 for $200,000. We weren't those kind of people who were coming in as millionaires with, an odd 100,000 lying around in case someone at some point decided that we needed to raise our house to meet current requirements. So essentially, if that was to happen to our family, we would be forced out of town. We'd be forced to sell. I don't think we're the only people in that position, because it's a great town to live in. So a lot of people have lived here for a long time. And I think we had neighbors who just recently passed away who loved living here and did until their dying day when they were both in their late 80s. But their house is even the subject now of, a lot of trouble in terms of the new owners are being forced to raise it, and they weren't expecting to either. So I think that's one point I want to make, is that not everyone can afford this. And I agree that it's a bit draconian for a lot of people. But my other point is more general. And I'd like people to consider the effects of raising houses and assuming that raising houses prevents damage. Because when you raise one house in a neighborhood, or you raise 2 houses in a neighborhood, what actually happens is you change the flow of water. You change the way that water flows through the neighborhood when we have a flood, which does happen, right? And we've had personal experience of noticing huge changes as a result of 1 or 2 houses being raised by 4 or 5 or 6 feet, and literally having water flow through our backyards just when there's a heavy rain, because you've changed the topography. If you're going to request that people raise houses, if that's going to be a policy that basically it's like a forced policy, people are being forced to the point where they will have to raise their house because it's going to be so hard to do anything else. Basically, you can't maintain your house. You're going to be forced to raise it. If that's the policy that you guys would like to enforce, then enforce it across the board and give us funding to do it. Don't try to say that you're leaving it to people's own personal choice. It's not really a choice. It's a forced policy. So it should come. It's basically a mandate. So maybe you fund people to do it. You give people the $50,000 grant to raise their house and say we demand everybody does it, which is kind of what I think is happening. So I didn't mean to sound aggressive there. I really appreciate the work you guys are doing, and I just wanted to put that in there as another point. And thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thanks.
Thanks, Ann. I think we just have a couple more. Travis.
There are 4 more people with their hands raised. It's 7:11 right now, so we can probably get to 2 more. Then we would have to call the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Can you hear me?
Correct. Okay, Travis, you're up.
Travis Gulick, 248 Boston Post Road. I'm a contractor in town. I see this almost every other week, going with realtors to houses, people looking at houses, and then really me giving them the unfortunate news that they can't do what they want to do with the house. without raising it. There's a lot that goes into raising houses. It's not just, all right, yeah, let's just put a couple beams underneath, raise the thing up, put a couple concrete piers in, and you're good. There's a lot that goes into it. There's, septic system, there's setbacks, there's stairs, there's building materials. You can't put ductwork underneath houses for HVAC because it's in a flood zone, even if it's BFE +1. So now you have to, try to find ductwork going up through the house into the attic to make these houses more livable and bring them up to today's standards. You have to try to go get modification from the state, anything underneath. So there's a lot more that goes into it than just a little bit of raising. There's a lot of building components that go into it that really affect, that money. And then people, looking back 5 years, it's, people are going to stop buying houses. I've seen it. I've met with a ton of people that look at houses and be like, oh yeah, no, I'm not buying that. I'm not going to put 120 grand into this to raise it plus renovating. So I'm just kind of saying out loud, I've seen it all over the board, and it really almost comes down, really the frontline work people is the realtors who are selling these houses, and some not educating the buyers. So some buyers, I've gone to houses that they didn't even know the rules when they bought the house. And then they look to me of how am I going to fix it? So there's a lot that goes into it. And, the look back period is very tough, especially working with clients that have been planning year after year after year, and now they're going to get screwed. And I don't know what to do for them. So I think the look back period is not really great, but there's a lot of construction that goes into it. It's not just a simple raise of a house. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Travis. I think we have time for maybe just one final one before we kick off our Board of Selectmen meeting. Greg Wagner.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
This is Greg Wagner.
Go ahead.
I live on 382 Bartlett Drive. I am also a builder in town. I think Travis Gulick made really good points regarding raising the house and the implications of that, and also how that relates to real estate. I am also an agent in town. And I think that most real estate agents really don't understand this rule. And when you're looking back 5 years, there's going to be people buying homes that are completely hamstrung by this rule, and they're not going to realize it. So they're going to want to change their kitchen, and all of that money has been allocated from previous remodels that the previous owner had done. I think the 1 year look back at first was a bit confusing, and I think we've sort of acclimated to that. And for some reason now we're taking it further. And I understand that there's environmental conditions that are impacting this. But I guess the main question that we have to ask is, who is this serving? Okay, where is the pressure to implement these kind of restrictions coming from? Is it pressure from FEMA? Is it the state? Because from all of the testimony and things I've heard from people here, it's not serving the residents. It's not going to help our tax base. So we have to ask why are we pushing for this 5 year look back? And as Emil said, in 95, he raised his house to meet the current conditions. Now he's well below what it would be. We have a moving target here that's punishing people that are some of the best part of the tax base of our town. I think we really need to look at who this is serving and where the pressure is coming from. And I'm not hearing that answer in any of the presentations that the town has given. That's really all I have to say. Other than that, I think there's been some really good points tonight, and I'm happy to live in this town.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm seeing one last hand raise, so we will take one final person. I know we said the last one was a final, but let's take one final person, and then again, This will be on our agenda on the 6th. And there'll be more opportunity for discussion. We may also consider hosting an additional public hearing as well on this subject if warranted. So there will be ample time for public comment. So who's our last one? John Ford here. Go ahead, John.
Hi, my name is John Ford. I have property at 57 and 61 Middle Beach Road, which some people refer to as the twin houses. It's the houses that are identical that face each other across the front lawn between the Beach Club and East Wharf. We bought the property after it had lain vacant for a number of years because no one wanted to tackle the renovation. They were basically like Sally Lawrence's house at 110 Middle Beach. They were summer cottages that hadn't been used for years. We bought them in 2018 because of the limits, the 50% limit on the assessed value, not the market value, the assessed value. We were able to do some construction during the winter of 2018, 2019. Then we did some more construction during the winter of 2019, 2020. Then we did some more construction during the winter of this current winter. And we're in the process of winterizing them. We've taken, brought the electric up to code, put insulation in the properties. We've taken the aluminum siding off of 57 and are going to have that painted when the weather turns. And what this proposal is really is, I heard someone say it was protecting homeowners, but really what it's doing is burdening homeowners. Because right now we've been following the rules that were in place when we bought the property. We've been keeping under the 50% limit. And now we're going to be punished because you're going to look back 3 years. 3 years, I'll be over the 50%. I won't be able to do anything for 5 years. And what I'm trying to do and what my family's trying to do is to improve the property for the benefit of ourselves, but also for the benefit of the town. There's some beautiful homes on Middle Beach Road, which you're going to negatively impact with provisions like this. So I would reiterate, a lot of the comments that were made. I, like Sally Lawrence, if I had known that this was coming, I'm not sure I would have bought the properties back in 18. And what would ultimately happen to those properties was they would have been torn down if you didn't have a mechanism in place to be able to gradually improve them. And with this proposal, you're taking away the opportunity of gradually improving them. You're having to do it in 5-year segments, which really becomes untenable. So I thank you for your time.
Thanks, John. And that concludes our public hearing for this evening. We will be adjourning and moving back into our official Board of Selectmen meeting, which we are starting slightly late, 20 minutes after the hour from a 7 p.m. start. There will be ample opportunity for additional public comment down the road again, April 6th, and potentially another public hearing. You also were given in the chat an opportunity to send an email to the Board of Selectmen if you have interest in sending additional comments. Thanks again for everybody's participation, and we will begin the Board of Selectmen meeting now. Over to you, Peggy. Sound like a radio host.
Thank you very much. I know. Back on to me. All right. Well, thank you. And welcome to everybody. This is I'd like to call to order the regular Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, March 22nd. And please, let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I will get the, oh boy, here we go. Flag up. And I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. And we will go on to the agenda. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the meeting of March 9th, 2021. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second? Any comments, amendments, or changes? Nope. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right.
Aye.
All right, great. So I'm going to move on. I will do this very briefly, my selectmen comments tonight, but just real quickly, we're continuing to see a lot of success in our vaccination rates. And obviously the governor made a big change by opening everything up by April 5th to all age groups. Madison will continue to hold weekly clinics. The senior center has actually been working closely with doing homebound residents now. So we're trying to hit that underserved population and people that have difficulty getting to get vaccinated. So we're continuing to work on that. We're also reviewing a lot of our policies, facility review policies, as well as staff policies. And our hope is starting April 5th, we are going to be opening town offices to the general public on Mondays and Wednesdays, where you would not need an appointment. The doors will just be open for public access. Although we do continue to encourage people to do as much online as possible. And we're going to start with 2 days a week as we go through April 5th. And then reevaluate that policy with the intention of opening up fully by early May to the general public. And then one other just note, I'll comment on the American Rescue Plan, because I know there's been a lot of discussion about this. Currently, it is our understanding that Madison would be receiving approximately $1.8 million as funds that would be used up to, needed to be used by 2024. And so I'm starting to coordinate with both our emergency management team, town senior staff, and then our long-term recovery committee to develop a plan. And so there'll be a lot more discussion, public discussion about the funds and how they would be applied. We're still also waiting on more specific usage guidelines from the US Treasury. And so we won't be getting those until another 30 to 60 days, but that will help outline a little bit more how these funds can be used. It's very strict and the legislation has specific guidelines in that. So there'll be more to come on that. This board will be talking quite a bit about what the plan is to use some of those funds in the future. So that's it from my update. Any other liaison reports or selectmen comments?
I have a report.
Okay.
From the so the Planning and Zoning Commission heard the application last week on the 28th for a single family residential cluster development at 856 Boston Post Road, otherwise known as the Ledges. I know this is a matter that's important to a lot of people. The applicants presented at that meeting. It's been continued, the public hearing has been continued to April 15th, at which the intervening parties will present, and then there will be opportunity for public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. And I think, Bruce, did you have your hand up? Yep.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on two separate topics this evening. First, there's been much discussion on social media about the Board of Selectmen unanimous approval of this year's proposed budget. This statement is a mistruth intended to confuse residents. We as select persons do not approve budgets. That role lies with taxpayers. Further, as a select person, I do not have line item voting rights for the budget. I either vote to send it in its entirety to referendum or I vote against sending it to referendum. This year, after much back and forth, I voted to send the first select person's requested budget on for consideration by the taxpayers. To be perfectly clear, I did not agree with every line item in the budget, and I believe that 2 consecutive years of 5% increases in operational spending by the town is not appropriate or sustainable. However, as our budget discussions progressed, it became clear that we would not be able to find further compromise, and rather than obstruct the process, I voted to move it forward. To those who believe this is based in partisan politics, it is not. There is much in the first select person's budget I agree with. Our difference lies not in politics, but our differing opinion of the community's appetite for funding larger and larger town government. Not just this year, but looking forward to the added and substantial tax burden of multiple anticipated bonding projects. All opinions aside, the decision to implement this budget rests with the taxpayers, not the Board of Selectmen. My second comment concerns proposed legislation in Hartford that would seek to silence the voice of taxpayers and residents on issues of development and quality of life in Madison. I am referring to efforts by state legislators and lobbying groups to override local planning and zoning authority and developers and developers to build without seeking permission or even public comment. This is especially timely due to the proposed Ledges project. Whichever side of that project you are on, our regulations and process guarantee your voice will be heard and considered. These new laws in Hartford seek to silence that voice. I urge this board to develop and adopt a resolution on behalf of Madison residents to denounce this and urge our state senator and state representative to vote against any legislation that in any way diminishes local control of planning and zoning. Further, I am requesting this be included in our next meeting agenda. Thanks.
Well, this is not a time to deliberate or debate. It is for comment, so I will leave.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm not
I will
inviting.
leave it as a comment. Anybody else have any public comment?
I do. So I have a couple. So from a Madison Youth and Family Services standpoint, I just wanted to remind people that there are some virtual QPR trainings for suicide prevention tomorrow, Tuesday, 3/23 at 8 p.m., sponsored by the DHHS PTO. And then on Thursday, 4/22 at 6:30, sponsored by the Polson PTO. These are about a 1 hour long and train people to recognize the warning signs of suicide and how to intervene. They are free and open to all residents, and you can register on the Madison Youth and Family Services website. And then from a Board of Ed standpoint, I just wanted to remind folks that Daniel Hand High School is scheduled to reopen for students 5 days a week starting Monday, March 29th. The board is continuing to consider the building projects and expects to receive specifications on the building this week. A recent report on projected enrollment showed an increase in enrollment is expected over the coming 8 to 10 years. The board just received the report and will prepare a summary to share with the public. Third point, the school district expects to complete round 2 of the vaccination on April 8th and is very pleased with the progress thus far. And then 4, spring sports seasons, I'm sure everybody's excited for this, is scheduled to start March 29th. A full season with a state tournament is currently planned. So that is that. And I believe those are all the updates. I have one more from the library. The library is asking that a tent was donated to the library by the Scranton Library Friends and is being installed until the end of March. It will cover the outdoor patio and be used for the Friends book sales, fundraising, and in-person library programming. The tent will be a permanent fixture until early December and includes heating and electricity. The library's next fundraiser is April 7th to celebrate Library Giving Day. So that is end of my report.
Okay, great. Any other liaison reports? Nope. Okay, moving on to citizens' comments. Lauren, do we have any citizens' comments?
Yep, they're starting to roll in. I'm going to allow Kelly Pagentini first.
Hello, everyone. This is Kelly Piagentini over at 3 Matthew Court in Madison. My comment just has to do with regards to the Island Avenue property. I just wanted to say that I think that, OLM Prep has worked with the town for 3 years to make sure that the best use of the property was explored. I do believe that selling the property to OLM Prep is a win for both the town of Madison and for the children who attend the school. OLM Prep currently employs over 25 staff members and uses a number of local businesses. A private school will continue to generate taxes for the town, and the scenario I feel is a win for everyone to keep a vibrant school downtown and does not change the character of the neighborhood. And that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other public comment?
Laura Downs is next.
Hi, Laura Downs, 54 Corey Ledge. At this point, I know that you're all familiar with the proposed cluster development project at 856 Boston Post Road, also known as the Ledges. I know that you individually and as a board can't comment on the application at this point, but I do want to highlight just a few issues regarding cluster housing and special exception permits in general that have arisen with this application, but have a much broader implications for the town development. The applicant's attorney has stated that beyond the General's Residence project at 908-916 Boston Post Road, there are only 2 properties remaining along this scenic and historic section of the Boston Post Road that qualify for this special exception permit for cluster housing. This is a complete oversimplification. As a reminder, the General's Residence site is comprised of 2 properties and combined to meet the lot size requirement for the regulation. In fact, any of the properties along the Boston Post Road between East Wharf Road and Sampson Rock Drive could be combined to create the square footage and frontage required to qualify for a special exception permit. Neighbors have already been approached to sell pieces or the entirety of their land to create development opportunities. In addition, special exception permits are not limited to this stretch of the Boston Post Road. Outside of the town planner's office and a circle of developers, there is not much awareness of where these areas or the surrounding neighborhoods are. The Planning and Zoning Commissioners are a dedicated group of appointed volunteers, and they have meaningful discretion to approve or deny special exception permits based on criteria detailed in the regulation. The applicant representatives have spoken at length, and the public has not yet had a chance to speak, but they will. The application is being presented as a must approved based on a narrow reading of the regulation and an effort to stifle public comment. I'd encourage all of you to open a much broader discussion of this regulation and its potential impacts on the town, as you are the elected officials who will deal with the backlash. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you very much, Laura. Sorry, I was muted. Lauren, any other comments, public comment?
Alana McMillan is in.
Okay.
Hi, Alana and Watson McMillan. We're at 447 Bartlett Drive. We just wanted to offer our support for Our Lady of Mercy Prep Academy staying at its current location at Island Avenue. We know that this has been positively spoken to in the last couple of town hall meetings. We know that we've seen polls from the Island Avenue Committee as well. We really feel that having a neighborhood private school as part of the opportunity to bring people and keep people in Madison is exceptionally important. Scott, thank you for your comments about Daniel Han. I also have a high schooler who's at Daniel Han, so we are also very excited with the activities restarting next week. But I have to tell you, that high schooler did go to the former OLM private school for 10 years, right? 2 years a pre-K, kindergarten, 8 full years. And now that we have OLM prep right here at home in Madison, in a location that housed our Island Avenue school for 50 years, I have my younger child in that school and I want him to continue there. So we really, really do appreciate having that location, having it in the neighborhood. And we feel that that will really help our community for many years to come. People come here. We love our public school as well. Don't get me wrong, but people like to have choices. And having the choices of having private school along with an exceptional public school system really brings the right kind of people to Madison that we're looking to help support our community.
Hi, this is Watson McMillan. Just to add on to that, when I think about our community, there's several things that come to mind and stand out. But one of the main things that attracted my wife and I to Madison over 15 years ago was a sense of community. From the downtown to the beaches, there's a real neighborhood feel. Island Avenue was in the same location for now, I guess, about 50 years. And OLM has been there for the past 3 years. These are the things that contribute to that feel of community. By giving OLM a permanent home at Island Avenue, I think we ensure that there are some areas in town that don't have to be high density housing projects. After all, it seems to me, by consensus anyway, at least in the last one or two votes, that most of the town feel the same way. Keep all them at Island Avenue. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate the comments. Any other citizen comments, Lauren?
Robin Phillips.
Okay.
Robin, go ahead and unmute.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Robin Phillips. I live at 880 Boston Post Road. I'd like to make a couple of brief comments on our communication processes based on my experience in reviews of cluster development as it pertained to the General's residence and now to the Ledge's application. And I think it's quite timely in view of Selectman Wilson's comments earlier. There's a common thread in my experience of these projects, and the common thread is that town residents are not sufficiently aware of things that are planned in our community. In the case of General's residence, for example, regulations were changed in October 2019, and only one person I know of in the neighborhood knew that was happening, and was the only member of the public to comment speaking in favor of the change. Even the abutters of the General's residence did not know or did not understand what was being proposed. I'd recommend you may want to read the minutes of that meeting. Currently now, in the case of the Ledges, people again are simply not aware of the changes that are being proposed, we found. You may have looked at letters sent to planning and zoning or letters to the newspapers, or you may even have looked at social networks where you know people don't hold back, and read the same indignation and opposition. And the message is the same from everybody. What's happening and how is this being allowed? So my point is, we need plans for any development, but in the downtown area in particular, to be understood. And we need to listen to people and give them ample opportunity to comment. The communication process today is simply not working effectively. In fact, it's falling far short of what it should be. So it seems to me that if you're part of the system, if you're a commissioner, an architect, builder, engineer, lawyer, etc., then you may think it's fine. But if you're not part of the system, then it doesn't work. It's complex and it's really not transparent. So I think there are a number of things that can be done, and some of them are quite simple. This obviously isn't the time to go into detail, but I am not just complaining, I guess I am, but I'm more than willing to spend time on helping to develop an improved process. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else, Lauren?
That was it.
Okay, we've got a lot of people active and interested, which is always a good thing tonight. So and many different topics. So thank you very much for people coming out and voicing your opinions to the board. I will move on. The next thing we have in here is review the 2021 beach season planning. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to make this very quick, which is challenging for me, but I will try to do it. I'm just going to spend a real quick minute on presentation mode. And I guess what I wanted to convey to the public, and just because I've gotten some email questions from residents over time, is that, you know, we have learned a lot from last year's beach season, and we're trying to do a lot to be proactively planning ahead for next year. And part of that is working closely with the state and trying to tackle some of the issues around Hammonasset. We actually had several meetings over the last 12 months with DEEP, and then recently had a meeting with the deputy commissioner and tried to come up with some collaborative ways we can work together to resolve some of the problems that we've had with Hammonasset, and also possibly getting some funding relief and payment for services. So we're advocating for a number of things for the town right now. The Beach and Rec Commission and the town is also planning for our local beaches and what things might look like this summer. We are reviewing the non-resident pass policies, and we'll probably come out with some new suggestions for this year. The Beach and Rec Commission recently, I think, continues to recommend no changes to resident passes this year, because I think everybody felt that it was kind of traumatic last year, and let's try to just have a normal summer and not impose any kind of fee increases in a time that we're all feeling a lot of economic strain. But they are committed to a thorough review of the program structure starting in the fall of 2021. And then finally, just some of the parking issues and other public safety needs. So this is all in process, and there'll be more to tell residents kind of where we're coming out on this. I also, I'm just going to include this in the public record. It is a presentation that I did to the department at the state level, deep on Hammonasset State Park and some of the issues that we face. It's about a 6 or 7 page presentation. This will be part of the meeting minutes. The board has already been sent a copy of this, so I won't spend time reviewing that, but I just thought the public might understand that we are advocating, we are planning, and we're trying to find some long-term solutions, and then for how we work with the state, and then also just some short-term improvements just to create a better experience for everybody here in Madison this summer. And so I thought I'll leave that at that today. I think another time we'll have the chair of the Beach and Rec Commission come back and have a more lengthy discussion about some of our policies and things like that. So if everybody's good, I'll just move on from that.
One quick question, Peggy. Did the state give you any indication of what their opening expectations are regarding capacity and the ongoing COVID testing and the impact that was going to have on beach operations?
The original discussion we had with them, they were indicating they might have some capacity restrictions, but that was actually prior to the governor coming out with this new, reopening plan. Mm-hmm. So I think we're supposed to meet again in April to get an update on them. And then in terms of the test sites, we actually have a call scheduled with CHC this week, who runs the COVID testing site, to talk about that and what the future plans are going to be for that at the park. So as we learn more, we'll share that with the public.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. And so next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve appointing the Conservation Commission as the Sustainable CT coordinating entity. And I'll allow Dave Anderson to talk about this, but we did talk about Sustainable CT at one of our other meetings, and this is trying to create a better organizational structure to tackle Sustainable CT. So I guess actually, can we get a motion to approve appointing the Conservation Commission, and then we can go into discussion? Go ahead, Scott. Yep.
I'll second.
Okay, great. All right. So Dave, why don't you kind of walk through the thinking here and how this is going to work for us?
Yeah, so we've had a few conversations about trying to improve our organizational capacity to participate in the Sustainable Connecticut program. As I mentioned to you previously, the first year it was really Woody Weiss and myself pretty much tackling it, just the two of us. And it was a huge work effort, and we decided we need to try to expand that committee. We made an attempt a few years ago to add some additional bodies, and we had about a 5-member sustainability team, and that didn't work as we had anticipated. So I had talked most recently to this board about the possibility of maybe combining a few commissions in some formal way, which we had entertained. But then Peggy and I had an opportunity to talk to some of the staff at Sustainable Connecticut, and they laid out that a few communities have had a little bit of a looser organizational structure that they found successful. So they would have a very small core committee and then just pull in individuals or groups to tackle different action items based on interest. And so there wasn't a requirement to attend ongoing meetings for those individuals. If they were passionate about, pollinator pathways or composting, they could help the town achieve certification points in those arenas, and then they could step off and not be involved in the core group. So I ran that idea by the Conservation Commission and asked them if they'd be willing to serve as the coordinating entity. So working with my office to try to tackle some action items on their own and then coordinate efforts by others to earn us certification points, and they agreed and are very enthusiastic about doing that. And so I think our request for you tonight is, it is not a surprise to the Conservation Commission. They voted to I guess, act in that capacity. And I think that it is a good solution for us to continue to engage with the program. So I'd hope you do it.
Dave, was there any conversation around consideration of incorporating the Energy Commission as well into this?
Yeah, that was our initial conversations were in that direction. We talked about potentially combining the two committees, and for a couple of reasons that didn't, it wasn't met with resistance. I don't want to characterize it that way, but it was a little bit too complicated and time consuming to get off the ground. Oh, I do have, though, an expression of interest from several members of the Energy and Efficiency Committee to participate in the Sustainable Connecticut process. So they'll still be on the Energy Commission, but they'll join, forces at those certain action items that are relevant. So they'll be
sort of a natural linkage, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think this is going to be an evolution a little bit too. And I know I did speak to Heather Crawford this afternoon, Dave, and we'll need to touch back with her about some of the, does there have to be some sort of amendment to their charge or any of that stuff? We were kind of debating about, and I deferred to you because you would know better what would need.
We decided that wasn't necessary. We're just, they're willingly, and we're asking them to do this. But I think in the long run, if we decide that this is successful or that needs further tweaking, we may want to look at their charge and, evaluate if we want to add this formally or not.
And I think that the positive thing is this is just going to enable us to tap into a lot of energy in the community on all these issues relating to state, and it allows people to focus on what they care about. So you'll have certain people that just want to focus on, the pollinator pathway, or somebody that's going to be very interested in an anaerobic digester for food waste material, or so it's a way to kind of harness that and then put it under one umbrella as part of our sustainable program. So any other questions for Dave on this? No? All right, all in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, thanks,
Aye,
Dave.
please.
Thank you.
All right, great. Next item on the agenda is discuss and take action to approve a line item transfer request in the amount of $180,608.28 for salary reconciliations into town departments. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. All right, great. Deb's here to just give you a brief overview. This was actually already approved at the Board of Finance meeting last week, so they've already approved this.
I'll keep it brief. This is an annual task that we do every year, transferring funds from the salary reserve account into each department's budget. So if you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. No, it's a pretty routine thing that we do all the time. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. All right, thank you, Deb.
Thank you.
In there with all the comments tonight.
It was fun.
All right, item number 9 is discuss and take action to approve a special appropriation request in the amount of $42,000 to purchase electronic message boards for the Emergency Management Department to display public safety announcements determined during the budget workshop cycle of the Board of Selectmen, pending final approval at the annual budget reconciliation town meeting. Can I get a motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, and second, great. Al?
Second.
Second,
Either
okay.
one of us can do.
Okay, great. So this is basically what we had kind of already recommended or voted on in the budget workshop, that we would request that the Board of Finance do this. And they actually went ahead and did vote to approve this at the last week's meeting. This is something we felt was more appropriate to pay for out of fund balance. And we also had a timing issue because we want to get these in place before the beach season starts up. So we're not renting.
So far, only go 8 times the stores.
So this is 2 signs, correct?
That's my understanding. It was 2 signs. Yep. Any other questions for Sam on this? Because I know we've talked about it a few times.
No.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right, Sam, thanks for hanging in there too.
Thank you.
You got to get a home computer. You're always in the office. So,
I'm getting other work done while I'm waiting.
well, that's true, but you got to talk to Art about that. Okay. Okay, item number 10 is discuss and take action to award the project management owner's representation support contract for the Island Avenue School to Colliers International. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay. A second? Okay, so so basically this is kind of, we've had this on the agenda a couple times, talking about having Colliers be kind of our representative and work with us on the RFP process for Island Avenue. And basically, since our last meeting, we talked about running more of a parallel process between the facilities committee that is being formed and just looking at all our facilities, and then also trying to move forward the Island Avenue RFP process also, so we can hear what the interest actually is in the building for alternative uses if it weren't going to be for town use. And so I kind of made just a few minor modifications with Colliers to align them, that they would coordinate with the facilities committee and all the other work that we're doing on this project. And so with that, I just want to get this moved so we can get, because I think the RFP is going to take some time to pull together. It's complicated. You know, we've got a lot of different considerations for this. This isn't some typical RFP process that we would normally run. And so I want to get moving with Colliers just to get the planning going on this. So any questions or comments by the board?
I just want to point out that part of this agreement includes facilitating public meetings and public discussion. So the part of the process is more than just representing us as the owner of the property. They're going to be in large part facilitating the public discussion around how this all happens and who it happens with. So it's in the document, and for people who don't read it, I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important point, because that's going to be absolutely a part of this whole discussion, is going to be a very much public hearings. So people actually have real proposals to review and evaluate versus speculation, which is kind of where we are right now. And so it just allows us to actually get those real proposals in writing and to review them with the public and have the public weigh in. Okay, so all in favor of approving I guess, awarding the project management for the Island Avenue School to Colliers International, say aye.
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 Okay, great. All right, next item is discuss establishment of a town facilities committee. And this is further conversation, I know, from what we've had at other meetings about the facilities study that was phase one was kind of completed a few weeks ago, where DRA presented kind of preliminary findings. And then the discussion was the outcome of that is two prongs. One is developing a master plan for our facilities. And the other piece is actually having a standing facilities committee that the town would kind of set up and have them own all this type of discussion going forward. And so I know that your committee, there's an RFP committee that was in place that kind of helped work through phase one of the facilities assessment plan. And so now I guess some feedback from your discussions about where we go from here would be great. And I know Dave's involved with this, and then Aaron and Scott sit on that RFP committee. It sounded very complicated, what I just said. We know what it's about, but the public's probably scratching their head. So I will let Dave kind of kick this off.
Well, I guess I mean, I'm happy to talk, but I'd also let Scott and Aaron kick it off if they felt appropriate. And then I can fill in if needed. Scott, do you want to?
Yeah, I have no problem. I mean, I think we had a really healthy discussion last Friday amongst our volunteers and town staff regarding sort of the next phase of what do we do. And I think, I think we shared, I think a collective agreement that, we weren't necessarily prepared to launch right into the next phase of a master plan with DRA, but that we would prefer to put in place the permanent facilities committee as a sort of a first starting point, and then have that committee begin those discussions about, what does an RFP look like for a master plan? What do we even want to get out of a master plan? What are our goals and objectives? How does this align with the plan of conservation and development and some existing documents that we already have in place? So, I mean, I think we're sort of taking a slight step back, not necessarily to lose momentum, but I think to be thoughtful in our decision making here as to which vendor we consider to guide us and facilitate us. And interesting, what that exact word, one of the thoughts that came out of it is maybe we don't necessarily need an organization to create the master plan for us. Maybe there's somebody who could actually provide more facilitation to our process to help guide us through the process and us doing it as a town ourselves. So I think more thinking needs to come, and we're going to have several more meetings. But Aaron, Dave, did I hit sort of the high points there?
Yeah, I think you hit the high point. I think so. We set up a meeting for this coming Thursday at 1 o'clock. And I think the purpose of that meeting would be to discuss a little bit further about what a facilities committee might be comprised of, in terms of membership and what a charge might be for that committee. And I think if we're able to flush that out in the next meeting or two, we bring that back to the board for a recommendation as kind of the first step in this process.
Okay.
I definitely saw, I think, other towns that are doing something similar. So I think leveraging, some best practices and experiences from other towns as well, whether there be a charge that we might be able to leverage as a starting point, or even just looking at some master plans that have been done would be useful. I know Aaron found a great example out there that we talked a little bit about. So I think there are examples out there that we should be looking at and getting smarter on. See, I gave you credit, Aaron. See that?
Okay. Well, so it sounds like there'll be a follow-up conversation on this. I do believe that as a town, we've talked all along, is we need that vision and the kind of that strategic plan to guide us. And I always kind of envisioned three different components of that. One is the plan of conservation and development, which is going to be launched, I think, starting this year. Actually, we'll start looking through that process, which is really kind of land use, but kind of some of the overall visioning of our community. And then there's the facilities, which is really focused on town buildings. And then how do we use those town buildings to serve the community? And then I think the third part that we kind of don't quite have a grasp on yet is, what does the community want and aspire? And what do they want from their town government? And so that was a component I felt was important as part of the facility planning process. I wanted there to be an assessment of what the public wants. What services do they feel that we should be providing? What are we not providing? And then some of it is, how do we use facilities to do that? And so I think it's an important thing to move forward on, what shape it takes, whether it's in-house with a consultant guiding us, or whether we actually outsource a chunk of it. That sounds like the debate that you're having within your committee right now.
So my
we
thoughts
even
on
talked
this.
too, Peggy, about
Go ahead, Scott.
You want to go, Bruce?
No, you go.
I was just going to one final point here. We even debated or just talked about and teased out the idea about a facilities committee versus a building committee, and having potentially both, having a standing building committee that would go act on specific projects, but that the facility committee would look broad and wide across all 36 of our buildings. So that, I thought that was an interesting discussion. I think sort of elevated our eyeballs to some new thinking.
So I just wanted to pick up, Peggy, on your comment about strategy and the town strategic plan, because you're absolutely right. That is something that we have to do. And my concern and my input here is that we also need to push a facilities committee forward quickly. There is some part of the strategic plan that they're going to rely on, but I believe there are some tactical projects that we can get that group going on right away that will yield us dividends quickly, such as the inventory, making sure that we are balancing the use of the properties. We talked about a reservation system. So these are not really strategic activities, but things I think that are productive and valuable to us in the near term that this group can work on right away.
Yeah, and we actually did some of the action items that came from that DRA study. We've already had internal discussions. They're things that really the town can move forward on. They're operational things, some like the scheduling software. There was a number of checklist things that we can just do it, right? I think we all agree they were the right things to do. And we're going to move forward on a lot of those things quickly that are more just tactical operational type action items. Okay, so we'll just plan on this will be another data point on our next meeting, and hopefully there'll be a little bit more kind of detailed recommendations, I guess, on how to move forward with this. So item number 12 is I need a motion to accept the resignation of Bob Augusta from the Inland Wetlands Committee alternates with regret.
And thanks. So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right. Yes. They all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you, Bob, for serving us. And, obviously that means there's going to be an opening on that committee. And we're just so grateful that, we have so many volunteers step up and serve when they can. So thank you for your service to the town. Item number 13 is, and I don't have the number. Do we have any refunds?
I didn't see that included in the.
There are none.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. I thought I missed it. All right, great. Item number 14, citizens' comments.
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, great. I guess then, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So
moved.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you very much. We moved that through that quickly. And there's obviously going to be a continuing conversation on a lot of the things we talked tonight. So thank you so much.